Holy shit, the intro cycled really fast there. I just went downstairs to get a drink from the fridge and came back up, and it's already gone through. Jesus. Hi, everybody, welcome. We'll continue along with one path ends. No. Which patch was that? A long time ago? We're doing The Only Way. And so I was playing a little bit last night, going through the story of Kerry, got about halfway on my new character here, and learned some new stuff that I'd missed before that I want to show off. First of all, in the instance where you're initially traveling through the tower, and you first fight the Omega Squad, the 3 superpowered Asura and all of that. In that first instance, there's a crazy big side quest, which some of you guys in the comments were warning me about. So I have actually played a little bit of that now. Basically, you find a seer ghost in there. It feels a lot like doing like a GW1 bonus objective, to be honest. You meet a seer ghost in there, and they've lost their memory. They were trying to ascend too. They had a cohort of like 16 other people with them, and slowly they were all dying. Even just getting through the jungle to the tower, they were dying, and then they were failing as they were progressing. And you basically needed to read this seer's journals, and then they would quiz you about their life as they tried to reclaim their memories, and you'd have to get the information correct. I wasn't actually the instance controller at that point. If you make a mistake, you can just sort of go back and find the correct answer instead, so there aren't really any stakes to it, I guess. But yeah, it was fairly interesting. Now, I've had a YouTube comment from one of you suggesting that once you've done it, it augments more of the story later, so I don't know how we feel about that, but I'll keep an eye out. There were no massive lore bombshells or big story twists or anything like that in there. It was definitely really fun, and it fleshes out the instances even more. Already, I'm very, very impressed with this patch for being as long as it is, and that bulked out that instance a lot. Yeah, you did see me at one point in the open world in these tunnels, in like jumping puzzly looking rooms with energetic balls rolling around and stuff, and I wondered what they were for and what they were all about. Well, it was that. So you know, you were supposed to climb around and find the different journals. I think there were 5 different journals to find, so that was one thing. Another thing that was super cool, that I want to show you guys, that place, the Moth Marsh. I didn't really know what I was looking at, but I visited the Moth Marsh last night, and it's kind of cool. I mean, is it happening already? No, not just yet. There were lots of weird little pickups and things that I found that, again, made me quite happy. One of the big topics we've had many times over the years, I mean, Christ, we were talking about the idea of an overlay that told you the mount species earlier, in the last part. There's so many interesting mounts and so many cool, like, models and things that I feel like the devs could integrate into the environment to, you know, pad it out and make it feel a bit more lived in and get a bit more creature diversity, right? And creature diversity is such a big thing for me when it comes to feeling like I'm on a worthwhile new adventure. Can we not like take up drafts on Warclaws? Pretty sure you can. Well, they did exactly that here. They have been doing it more and more as the years have gone by. Obviously the Wavehawk skimmers are a great example from VOE, but here, this place, the Moth Marsh, is somebody fighting that? I guess I'll fight this with you if you want. Christ, I haven't actually properly played Power Rip for a long time. Is there another player here? I think I have. Yeah, I do have quickness. So what is it? You throw all the buttons, you do 3 autos, you do another 3 autos, you dip out. You gain your souls, you refresh, you don't... Oh, we've got to start moving again. No, nice, that's it. Okay, now we move. Make sure you always hit your weapon skills as fast as possible. I think you want to spam F2. Oh no, isn't it? You get the spirits up, go 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 2, drop out, something like that, right? Stand still. Spear is what I've lost all my muscle memory for. I don't remember how best to trigger spear skills. Make sure you dump all the souls. We're maintaining the quickness well enough, though. I mean, there's that. Isn't it something like that? Isn't it 2? Also, below 50, don't we want to grave dig a bit more? I'll apply some of fear there. Oh, there you go. It died. Quickness was okay. I don't know. I don't really remember a formal rotation for that. It's been a while since I played it. Right, yeah. Check this place out. On all the trees and stuff in here. Where are they? Come on. No. It's not here. Where the fuck is it? It's called the Moth Marsh. Because across all the trees in one of these glades... Here, look at this. There's all these sky scales. These lay-spotted moths. Look at these. These are an actual skin that you can have. I don't know if they were one of the like more expensive bands of skins, you know, with the bigger dyeing and stuff. But holy shit, look at that lay-spotted moth, lay-spotted moth. I was adventuring here and I was like, oh my god, there's just shit all over the trees. I did not notice this on the first run through, and there's probably lots of cool little details like this on the map. That's exactly what I was talking about with mounts before, you know, if you just... Something about the exploration makes it so easy for me to miss things. That might just be a me issue, I don't know. But wow. I mean, and obviously eventually you do spot stuff. It's not like I missed it forever. I see it now. But yeah, oh my god, we have a cool super chat there. Moo Reaper, $20. And a GIF saying rage quit. Nice. Wow. People very rarely do that on YouTube, dude. Very, very, very rarely. In fact, I didn't realize YouTube offered stuff like that. That wasn't those weird emoji character things. The YouTube mascots, if you guys know what I'm talking about. You love these daily leapfrogging streams, even sarcastic, because we've now done 3 in a row. Yeah, there's no leapfrogging. There's too much I want to do, guys. I want to do this blog post series about GW3. I want to do Reforged stuff. I said about GW3. It's not really about GW3. It's about GW2. But hey, there you go. So, as for today, okay, so I'm excited to explore the world. What I really want to do is find all the lore in the open world. So if you guys tell me the achievement name, we will try to track that, and we'll just grab as much of the lore as we can. I think that'd be interesting, and just explore more of the map that we haven't seen yet. And in fact, for consistency here, let's do that on our Paragon. Maybe we can go for World Comp. I don't know, something like that. I'm already boiling hot again, but we'll just have to deal. Oh yeah, we get to play the Condi variant. Very happy with that. Let's just make sure we're standing somewhere safe. But before all of that, as you've seen from the title, I did just gather... I was going to start this stream 15 minutes earlier, but I've just been going through all your comments from the past few days, guys. And I've gathered a lot of your thoughts, critiques, reviews. Now, remember, I mentioned that there's some kind of post on the GW... on the WoodenPotatoes subreddit about... see, this is cool. Look, this is clearly like a little jumping puzzly thing. I'm just going to fly, I guess. I wonder if there's a jumping puzzle here where, once again, you have to hold like a baby chick or something to do it. In fact, that really feels like what I'm doing right now, doesn't it? Should we try to go to the bottom? This is totally a jumping puzzle, isn't it? It's here. Are we going to find some kind of like... Where else would it go? Here? Down here? Here we go. This is the floor here. Is there a cute little creature to collect or something? Is there an adventure flag on the minimap? No? There was that thread, and we can now read it. So what I've actually done is I've put that... I'm going to put that on screen in just a second, and we'll see what you guys think. I was trying to get somewhere safe where things wouldn't attack me, but apparently razor teeth are swarming out of the seas. Huh, so I can just do this for funsies? There's no reason to, because you could mount, but you can... Or maybe a part of the meta? This might be a part of the meta at some point somehow? Man, I keep getting messages on my phone about visual voicemail that I have it activated. I know I have it activated, and it keeps doing it. You want Scholar of the Garden for the lore books? Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. So, thank you. There you go. Scholar of the Garden. Oh, misclick. Scholar of the Garden. Read all of the noteworthy books scattered around Eternity's Garden. We've got 0. Wow. Not a single one. Okay, let's eyeball that. Also, in chat here, so in the live chat, hello to everybody who's made it in the live chat. And again, thank you so much for that $20. Cossage says, in case you didn't figure it out yet, the old Tyrion mystery, Tide that I teased you about, the All-Seer, has to do with the name of one of its seer avatars. It's Calogero, the first elder. So I've only done that meta that once, and it was in a blind panic, and I didn't really retain anything. But you're talking about when we did the meta on stream. There's the giant statue in the middle, and then there were the avatars surrounding it, right? You're saying one of those avatars has the name Calogero? And he says that seems to be a reference to the Char scholar, Calogero the Elder, in Personal Story. He was the guy at the end of the Personal Story who showed up at Fort Trinity, suggesting he was going to explore Dwarven lore, but then the Dwarven path was never added to explorable mode. He's specifically called the First Elder in this lore book in the Sanctum of the Divine, and the First Elder point of interest in the Northwestern Woods seems to refer to him. I don't understand how that's a reference though. On the one hand, we have a Char scholar in Fort Trinity called Calogero the Elder, who's a member of the Dermond Priory. And on the other hand, we have an ancient seer civilization with an ancient seer avatar called Calogero the Elder. I don't see how they're connected. I get that the name is the same. That's really odd to me. It would suggest that the Char is named after Calogero and the seer info somehow bled down to him. But then he was interested in the dwarves. He wasn't even the seer guy. I don't know. That's very odd. Why would Arenanet reuse that name in that way? Am I missing something? That's very strange. Very inscrutable. I'm unable to scrute that one. No scruting here. After the previous DS9 talk, you hope I watch Babylon 5 and realise how much DS9 was ripping it off. I have an Aussie friend, who goes on and on and on about that to me. If I ever mention that show to him, he's immediately like, "Oh, you should watch Babylon 5. That was the original." And I get where that comes from. If I ever watch or enjoy or play or see something and it's clearly just derivative of something else, I'm always, and I was a fan of the something else, I'm desperate to get people to see the something else. Because it's like the original thing deserves the credit, you know? The OG deserves... So where do we get with the map comp here, by the way? There were 2 hearts. We got all the waypoints, some of the vistas, so we could finish a heart today as well, maybe. But I want to do this Q&A section first, so let me just scroll down. Let me scroll. Did you find the small JP yet? No, I did not. Hopefully we can get those details today. Right, let's get into your thoughts here, guys. Ready? Let's see what everyone has to say about this patch. First of all, I was talking about that weird talking style. And Emily says... Alright, 5 across. Word for people who always talk really loud starts with a D. ... twat. No, I figured out the word though. Alright, it was stentorian. That's the word I was thinking of. Which does have 2 very prominent T's in it, but does actually begin with an S. The T's were what stuck in my mind. Stentorian, that's the word. That's the Brian Blessed kind of speech pattern-y thing. There you go. Next, so we got Zhuhang. Now, Zhuhang is a regular flyer on the Q&A sections. I'll say they're always dropping really good lore insights, and that there's no difference here. Zhuhang is driving a lot of the conversation here today, guys. So let's buckle up. First, he quotes me saying, "Who is this random Asura that has a grudge against Isgaran?" And Zhuhang says, "Yeah, surely we'll get an answer as to why Natty hates Isgaran. ... Right. And I didn't get that 3 days ago, but I do now. Yeah, we never figured that out, do we? So you got 3 Asura members of the Omega Squad, and we do get backstory about them, but Natty's hatred for Isgaran? No idea. They haven't explained that. I guess that'll be something from the next patch. That'll be where the story goes in the future. It's funny because I would have thought that Vlox would be exhibiting those kinds of sentiments. At VOE's launch, I kind of thought we were going to dig into Vlox and find that Vlox really didn't like Isgaran's power and the fact that he hid it from everyone else and that everyone deserves the power of Ascension and stuff like that. But this patch actually had like none of that. Vlox was nothing but vague, this release. And don't worry, I won't jump the gun. Lots of you guys are talking about that in the comments to come. So then there's this guy as well, Graven. Graven has a lot of really good insights as well in the comments over the past few days. Graven says, "I found audio logs in the open world for the other 2 members that established their personality and their experiences before transforming, but I haven't found the one for Natty yet. might further explain the obsession, or it would be a direct side effect of seer magic she was infused with. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I haven't seen these myself either. We haven't seen the lore books yet. So maybe it's out there and we're all just still trying to find it for now. It's really interesting to do that Natty is not experiencing side effects while the other two are. And there was a suggestion in the patch that it's because she's a woman and it's some physiological thing. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not based on sex. Maybe it's based on her outlook and she's got some really strong thing driving her. Maybe the fact it's a grudge is baked into it somehow. I don't know. But that's the only other thing that we can say is different about her than the other two. If you see the others, they were just kind of lost. In fact, I think what defined Zip was Zip didn't really have a purpose or something to channel his thoughts and feelings. But Natty did. And as a result, Natty hasn't had side effects, maybe? Maybe that's what they're going to be getting at? I don't know. Moving on, we've got Hardy83. I really suggest redoing that story instance you completed in this video. And that was 3 days ago, so I think that was day 2. And doing the achievement, which is basically a side story, since said story continues in a later instance and is pretty interesting. I think Hardy's referring to this seer ghost thing. Also, waiting sorrow, which I can't talk to just yet, we'll see as the days go along. But also, waiting sorrow frustrates me no end. They've talked about this in Secrets of Obscure. They have journals, notes, and do you know what I want to do with these? I want to add a filter. And I want to drop the opacity ever so slightly. Is that going to work? No, that didn't work. Oh no, because that's the opacity of a mask, which I haven't assigned. Can we just drop the opacity on its own? That would be cool. Nah, I don't know. I'll figure it out later. But usually when I do Q&A videos, like actual on YouTube, I drop the opacity slightly so you can see the game footage underneath a little bit. I always prefer the way that looks. Anyway, waiting sorry frustrates me no end. They've talked about us in Secret of the Obscure. They have journals, notes, and light conversations about what Isgarin did to her. But after 3 expansions, not a single real answer. Not a single answer why, of all beings, Isgarin decided to break every rule his people had to save her. Risk being expelled, risk being expelled, cutting her off from Coda. And so far, in this expansion, still no answer. What made her so important to do all that? Edit, I realise there is mention of previous transgressions with Isgarin, but I still feel that this is not being explained is frustrating as all. Lol, the cynic in me thinks it's Arenanet thinking vague storytelling builds mystery, when it really can just be frustrating, especially when it's an important plot point or motive. And Muffin Slobber says, hoping maybe a Far Shiver Peaks and classic Codan focused expansion will answer it now. Cope, probably, but since a lot of her story didn't happen up there, it could be a good time place. And, well, I really just want to go back up there and fill it in fully with maps. That's funny. I've always said this. Well, as far as RPGs are concerned, I've never really cared for snowy or frosty settings. Never. I don't know why. I think it's because I'm in the UK and I don't really long for cold weather, really. I don't care for overcast weather, shit like that. I don't know. As I said, for me, it's forests, it's beaches, it's sweeping fields and stuff. It's like I remember when Elder Scrolls, when Skyrim was being revealed, right? As the 5th installment, I was like, man, that's not exciting. So for Waiting Sorrow, here are my general thoughts. I don't think she was written badly in Secrets of the Obscure. I actually think she was written phenomenally in Secrets of the Obscure. Now sure, in retrospect we can look back at it and say, wow, it's been 3 expats now, we've got nothing. But just to look at Secrets of the Obscure on its own merits, right? She was intriguing, she was sad, she was very mysterious, she was completely off screen the whole time. There was a lot of mysticism there. There was a sense of a real history. I'm all about the Secrets of the Obscure handling of Waiting Sorrow, even just down to her name. Very captivating character. What I didn't really like was Janthea Wilds. What we ended up getting, the characterization didn't really interest me. Sort of the warm, happy grandma sort of vibe. But also she's a badass, which I didn't really think matched. Not everyone has to be a badass. But then also, I can't even remember what she called herself. This is how little I cared for it. What's she called now? She's not called Waiting Sorrow. She's called Guiding dawn. It's dawn something, isn't it? Rising dawn, is that it? That I didn't really appreciate that. And yes, I think Janthea Wilds really dropped the ball in giving us tangibles about who she is, and not just about her, but her invention, the Heart of the Obscure. Last year really dropped the ball. All right, so yes, I'm with you on Janthea Wilds, but then to come to this year again. A big part of me wants to say she's not a member of the cast, so I'm okay with not really getting tangibles. But then there's another voice that says, why isn't she a part of the cast? She should be a part of the cast. Wouldn't this story have been a lot better if it was the two of them bickering and reflecting and exploring this island together and we were getting tangible answers? And I don't really know why we didn't get that. Except to say, and this is the cynic in me, that Arenanet never figured the tangibles out well enough themselves. I think the story's really messy, really difficult to follow, and I've been saying this for a while now, and not in like a very fun way, not in a very, ooh, the puzzle comes together kind of way. So yeah, and Waiting Sorrow in a lot of ways kind of is the center of the storm, I think, for that. And even very casual players. Like, I don't know how casual players are supposed to get into it if it's too inscrutable, you know? And, you know, there were a lot of thumbs up on this sentiment from Hardy. I think a lot of people feel this way. But I will defend Seekers of the Obscure. I don't think I personally want to retroactively go back to Seekers of the Obscure and say that she was written shittily there. I think I'll only criticise the writing, Janthea Wilds forwards. And as for this year, a lot of it isn't... I mean, the thing is, a lot of it is about Waiting Sorrow. A lot of it's not. When it was just dealing with the whole gardeners and stuff, and when we're focused squarely on the inquest. But it does feel like that wriggle where we don't really even know what the ritual was or what that Isgarin did or what motivated it is kind of fiddly, and it feels plot holey more than fun. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to keep going forward because we keep circling back to this. So, I did have a hunt on the wiki. What exactly was said? What was Isgarin's motivation for ascending her? Why was it so important? And on the one hand, yeah, we have... Look, he was kind of a renegade. He was kind of a rebel. And he viewed the Elder Seers, like Sidoni, as too rigid, too arrogant, too inflexible, right? It was just his... They were not his own transgressions. At the end of the base story, when you're in the tomb, he says, look, I did a lot of things wrong. I'm not without blame. That's what he says to us. He says, I was exiled and I'm not blameless. So I think it's more just the overall character of Isgarin rebelling against the man, right? The answers why he did this to Waiting Sorrow. And I think that's the more important thing to talk about, because obviously then we draw these parallels between Isgarin and Vlox today. Vlox is a modern Isgarin. Vlox looks at Isgarin as Isgarin looked at Sidoni, right? They're the same people, just at different phases in their lives, or whatever. And hopefully Arenanet can really put a nice point on that as we play further forwards. But anyway, I was curious. It's having specifics about that moment. Why was it so important? There are lots of claws. There are lots of voices, right? Lots of people undergo the madness of Coda, and Isgarin didn't give a shit about most of them, even when he had his own organization, right? So what made it Waiting Sorrow so important? This is what we got last year from her perspective. I think this is the closest they ever did it. And it's her speaking. She said, thousands of years ago, long before Or's prime, I was born of whispers, visions, and images. I was destined to become a voice of Coda. The youngest the Codan of that era had seen. My claw. He was kind, fierce. He had sat with me many a night as there's a typo on the wiki there, as I acclimated to my role. We bonded, but the dragon storm raged outside our dens, and as the storm picked up, Coda's voice turned angry. My reality changed. I started losing myself. I couldn't trust the visions. They lied to me. I'm not certain it was Coda that I heard. And even that they're intangible about, right? They're intangible about... Was it Jormag? Was it the Dragonstorm, or is there something else going on? I hated having a destiny, and I felt like a threat. So I left. what she describes there doesn't seem too particularly crazy or different or special to what any other voices would have gone through. The only thing here is she fled before she ended up bringing the sickness upon the whole sanctuary, right? Stoic Order says, I know this story. Isgarin said, and here it is. Sorrow came to me. Which is interesting, by the way. I always had the impression of him going to her. I have this very clear image in my mind of them sitting in the woods together. Did we not get that scene painted to us at some point? He says, Sorrow came to me, and I helped her sever her ties to the mists. That's it. That's all he says. And huge swathes of this expansion story revolve around this. Coda's voice no longer burdened her. And Poised Arrow says, you're the missing voice of our ancestors? And Waiting Sorrow says, I am. And I've regretted leaving my people every day since. That's why I came here. And there was a lot of flimsy storytelling here as well, right? Because they conflate two things. There's Waiting Sorrow to run away while she's sick. And there's her decision to stay away after she's cured. But then there were some ideas that Isgarin saw she was getting really strong, so he couldn't let her go. I can't remember where the source is for that. But that's all I could really find, so I don't know, guys. I don't know. Wawama 6194 says, my biggest gripe with GW2 is that it looks, sounds, and feels rather comic book-like, whereas Guild Wars 1 felt very grounded still, even though it was utterly fantastical in many ways. Guild Wars 2 lost the Guild Wars identity in the desire to climb ever higher instead of just improving and properly expanding on what was good about Guild Wars 1... And he got a response from LLPTV here who says, old man yells at clouds. And I think there is some merit to saying old man yells at clouds. We've talked about this a lot of times before, right? I don't think Wawama is totally wrong in feeling that way. I can completely identify with them feeling that way, and there's a whole generation of players that feel that way. But I think what we have to understand, right, is Guild Wars 1 did manage to present that feeling and that vibe, but the way it did it are not necessarily things Guild Wars 2 can ever replicate. So let's talk about all the ways in which we get biased and we think Guild Wars 1 is better than it is. And I don't know, how many of you guys went to play Reforged a few years ago? Maybe a few months ago, maybe a few years ago, Christ. Maybe you recognize this now. These are the things I've always noted about Guild Wars 1. As someone who has played actively both games, I've dipped back in and out of them as the years have gone along. First, a lot of us were a lot younger when we played Guild Wars 1. Our tastes were not that refined. And we were more easily captivated. You play it, and then when you put the product away for years and years... Well, no, let me just leave that as its own point, okay? Our tastes weren't really that refined. Hell, the industry wasn't even that refined. So the bar was lower. I think that's one thing to focus on. When I compare Guild Wars, this game, to like really good storytelling, I've now had 30 years of watching films and having and watching TV shows and having experiences and being like, holy fuck, this was really good, you know? Like, I'll watch it, like when I think about really good storytelling, I might think of a movie like Spotlight. Like, Spotlight is one of my favorite films of all time. And when I first played GW1, I'd never experienced a story like that, or why a story like that would be good, or whatever. So now that I've got all these other things to compare it to, the bar's so much higher, right? So the new game, the new product, comes across much less favorably. I think there is something about... I know that sounds like a shitty, tacky excuse, but I think that is a real phenomenon that a lot of people don't think about. But let's say that you weren't a kid when you played GW1. Let's say you were 40 years old when you played GW1, and let's say, you know, you spent your life studying great literature and you still maintain that GW1 was a really great experience for you. I think the industry itself was in a more primitive place, and it was easier to fascinate nerds and geeks. You know, the bar for graphics and presentation wasn't that high, but storytelling too. The amount of voice acting that people were expecting, the number of ways in which we can engage with the game. Like, Guild Wars 1 was a very simple product, right? It didn't have all these secondary and tertiary ways of playing and touching Tyria, like through fishing, like through collecting mounts, like through having a house that you can decorate and stuff, which are now all standard and all now kind of expected. And I think that does all build into that sense of what the world was like. If you actually go back to GW1, it's a very thin experience. And Arenanet kind of benefit on it being so thin. There's very little dialogue, so you know what? You don't really remember it when the dialogue was bad. Actually go and watch an omnibus of the factions cutscenes and tell me there's any quality there at all. Shiro comes across as a stilted, ludicrous villain. Shiro's story is pretty good, but the actual presentation of Shiro is hilariously bad, and so are many of the ancillary characters like Danica. It wasn't done that well. Prophecies doesn't even have a good story. It's just whiplash. Oh, and now this happened. And now this happened. And now this happened. And now this happened. And it's mostly carried by the world building, which itself is mostly carried by the fact it's a novel new fantasy franchise. They only really did a lot of good world building in the early stages. A lot of those later regions have barely any quests, barely any lore pickups, barely anything to look at. It got carried by that feeling of reading the manual while it installed and paying attention during pre-searing and post-searing where most of the quests were. It got very, very fucking thin very, very, very quickly. And that leads me into the last thing, okay? And I've mentioned this so many times. I will continue mentioning this. I'm a huge fan of GW1, and I'll always be an advocate for GW1. But there is absolutely a huge bias about that game because you haven't played it for like 20 years. You haven't gone... All you have are your memories from when you were younger, when the bar wasn't so high, both from you personally, which is where you were in your life because you were probably younger at the time, but the industry itself didn't have a very high bar either, right? So it hit that captivating, cool feeling. And now you've spent like at least a decade away, and it's like... It's easy to remember things as better than they were. Just like any old bog standard nostalgia. When you're nostalgic about your teenage years or whatever, and you only remember the high points, and all the friction and all the stress and all the horrible moments just kind of melt away, right? And we become nostalgic and happy about just, oh, it was so great in the 70s. It was so great in the 80s. It was so great in the 90s. It's like, it's not very objective. Because, you know, distance makes the heart grow fonder. That is honestly how I feel about GW1 as a product. It is not actually that impressive of a product. It's not, okay? In some ways it is because it tapped into... Accidentally is because it tapped into that FromSoft thing, where I do genuinely believe less is more. Less is more. If you primarily tell your story through notes and pickups and you don't do that much voice acting, then you can get away with a lot more and you can build a good setting. There's something very real about that. It's why, like another big franchise I play on this channel, the TR franchise, the OG TR games are so atmospheric and emotive and exciting because they let you do it all in your own head. And I'm a big believer in that, right? I really do love those experiences, quiet experiences. And GW2 goes much more comic book, like with its, you know, its constant voice acting and all that. And it's much more adrenaline packed and it's much more jingling the keys in your face all the time. And so it has lost something from that. So yeah, look, I think both of you are right. I hate saying that shit. No, I don't. No, look, I don't think LLP TV is right. He's not yelling at clouds. He feels something real. It's just not very objective. So why do we care? Well, if we're talking about GW3, what are you saying, WP? Are you saying that GW2 is perfect and we're all just blinded by our nostalgia for GW1 and everyone needs to get over it? Should we just be GW2 fanboys forever? No, I'm not saying that. I really don't want to say that. What I want to say is that if Arenanet wants to recapture the GW1 vibe, it's not easy. And I think it takes a very sophisticated, very hands-off approach that will have to be slower and can be more budgetary, by the way, as well. So certainly if I was in a position of any note at that studio, I would be pushing for it. I would be looking for the FromSoft method, right? And what a lot of indie games do. I would be looking to dial it back. Give grand landscapes and grand ideas and big concepts, but the delivery has to be very sober, I think. It can be done in 2026. It can be done impressively. It can be done with beautiful, brilliant lighting engines like what we see with modern Unreal. It can be done, but I don't know whether the studio will care to do it because I don't think that they really care for that demo necessarily. I think they're going to want to try and jingle the keys in front of 15-year-olds and stuff because there's no money in it. There's no money in catering to the increasingly older more responsibility saddled 30-year-olds. So there you go. So that's my take on that, which has got very little to do with this patch. So let's move on. Narek Tarek says, I would really recommend to read all the books on the map. There's an achievement to track them. Yeah, no worries. We've got that. Bad news is there's one extremely interesting book locked behind heart progression of the Forge Heart that needs to be done in 10 days. I would recommend you read it from the wiki instead. Academic records. Also, events in that bio. Jesus Christ, 10 days. So people only just got that. Also, events in that heart area are interesting, and I would recommend to do them. Both by making new stewards and disenchanting transcended animals is interesting. On the discussion what story was best, I would still say it was Season 2. There was that feeling that Tyria is big back then, since all the races had their own agenda. It wasn't like the whole world is centered around the PC. Plus, the bar for what is reasonable to do was more accurate there, since they didn't kill big story elements, even if they could. Like the faux fire cleansing failing. I think you're making lots of very good points there. If they hold back more often, there wouldn't be stuff like Lazarus getting killed in one patch. I think you're totally right. I think as soon as Season 3 started, and it was... I think as soon as Balthazar was revealed to be a part of Season 3, we stepped into doing the big stories, and we lost something at that point. And it always felt odd to me and unsatisfying to me as soon as we got to Balthazar. Not that I think, you know, and I'm hindsighting here, because from Arenanet's perspective, they had nerds like WoodenPotatoes for years going on and on and on about the human gods and going on and on about wanting the Massart back and stuff. And so, naturally, they tried to do it eventually. But I do think that, yeah, there's such a thing as something that's too big. It's why I voted for the Thorman Overreactor Fractal rather than the Abaddon Fractal back before even that. And I think, yeah, I think, so to follow on from what we were talking about with getting the presentation just right and what I'd like to see from GW3, I do believe in the smaller stakes. I do. I think actually a very good franchise to look at is Dragon Age, and how DA2 put the scope entirely within a city. That makes the setting so captivating. And do you know why GW1 was captivating? Because you couldn't go to Ore. The lore was written, but you couldn't go there. Telling people about things that are there but they can't get to is always good. But once a setting is explored everywhere that it's ever talked about, now the setting feels really small, and that's kind of the phase that GW2's in now. And even worse, Guild Wars 2 I think is going even further along that line now, where it's not even exploring the things it is talking about. No, I phrased that wrong. I mean, like, we're looking for tangibles about Vlox and about Waiting Sorrow and stuff, but it feels like they're not really there. So they're half-heartedly exploring the topics, but acting like they've been explored, and that's where it gets even worse, you know? And I think that sliding scale is important to recognise. I never really thought of Season 2 in that way, but you're right, it kind of was that way. We just had a whispering game. Wing 2 Trio Environmentally Friendly achievement. Wanna come? I assume I have that already. Yeah, as of probably many, many, many years. Oh, you guys can't see. I just opened it on the UI there. But there you go. Okay, so next. Ben Collins here says, I've been a Guild Wars 2 fan since Heart of Thorns. I saved up to get the expansion when I was 13. Oh my god, dude, you were 13 when I was covering Heart of Thorns. You were 13 when I did the Heart of Thorns pre-show. 13? How old are you now? I've enjoyed it all up until this point. I played Secrets of the Obscure, but then I fell off with the last couple of expansions. I think mainly because I was more invested in the story, and I think the story just hasn't been as intriguing for these mini X-Packs. I'd like to think it's because they are saving their best ideas for potential GW3, but I was wondering what you think are the best ideas for the story in Guild Wars, or maybe what you think will be the main overarching story or threat in GW3. Well, when you say, what do you think the best ideas for the story are in Guild Wars, do you mean across all 3 games all at once? Because I see, since Reforged, I see reason to continue the GW1 threads. For that, I would focus on Joko, Evinia, shit like that. After, you know, a year of experimentation, adding new heroes, stuff like that. Assuming they're going fully funded with it. For this game, I actually think mini X-Packs are working mostly. I think the problem with mini X-Packs is that it feels like the storylines aren't connecting. It feels like it's been a bit messy and a bit convoluted, especially the ending of last year. So if they can iron that out, I'm actually fine with mini X-Packs, and I think Arenanet can just pick different locations around the world. Just keep expanding the plot points like they did in the exit, in the final instance last year in Lion's Arch, where they talked about this and this and this and this. You know, I'm happy for next year to get into Logan's love story with love affair with Keel, shit like that. I'm totally fine with that. As for GW3, I have no thoughts because I don't know what the premise is. If it even exists, this could all look so fucking stupid, guys. If we do the next patch, they announce the next mini X-Pack and that's it. All of this is going to be unbearably unwatchable. I actually had a comment as well. I was trying to screenshot, but I couldn't find it. I think they deleted it. One of you spuds, put a comment on my channel last night that said, oh my god, all of the GW2 content creators are suddenly talking about GW3. Clearly they all know something. Just spit it out already. And I thought to myself, the only reason I'm talking about it is because of that Reddit thread on my own subreddit, and because it's of note. I swear to God. But yeah, so GW3, it all depends. And you know, we've just generally been talking about the idea for years now, haven't we? Oh my god, I had no idea that in-game dialogue was on. To be honest, I thought it was off.
Might makes me right.
Why is F11 not working? That's weird. We turn the in-game dialogue off. There we go. Yeah, so I don't know. GW3, are they going to set it on Tyria? Are they going to set it in the Mist? Are they going to set it in a completely alternate timeline after Vlox fucks with the code of reality? I don't know. Depending on the answer to that, would go on to this. But what I will say is I don't like Tyria as it now is as a setting very much. I think the studio built up the Elder Dragons as this fundamental part of the nature of this plane of existence, Tyria. They did a lot to like talk about like the fabric of this reality is the Elder Dragon cycle and the Void. And when they rushed through that to complete it, I'm still not on, and people will disagree with me on this, and you're welcome to disagree with me on this, but I'm still not on board with the idea that the setting really has that much more to give in terms of like scale. In terms of small stories, sure, it does. You know, you can give me a Cryptis invasion, you can give me a Titan invasion, you can give me a love affair with Logan, and you can talk to me about the various, you know, characters that I still know and love. But in terms of like a big idea and this unrelenting idea that we need to have some, like it just feels like the setting's biggest, richest subject material is done, kind of, right? And if it's not, then where else do we go? Well, the ancient races. And look, we've had our Masart one, we've had a Seer one. I don't know, I'm not very excited. I'm not as wide-eyed or open-ended about Tyria as I was for probably 15 years straight. You know, right from Prophecy's launch up until Dragonstorm, with some minor setbacks on the way, I was really, really, really like, wow, Tyria's got so much to give. We're in the middle of this epic story that they've been building. And now I'm not quite so captivated. What I am captivated is when we move beyond Tyria, when we get back to the Mist, the Rift, the other worlds, the human gods, the Hall of Heroes, shit like that. Those all feel like aspects of the settings where a Guild Wars 3 could be set, where they have complete carte blanche. Is that the right phrase? They have complete freedom to go wherever they want with it. And I would be very excited about that. But if we stay on Tyria, so like you say, what would you want to see for a Guild Wars 3? I don't want to see Guild Wars 3 be another 250 years in the future. That to me is just meh. Oh, the Sylvari are more powerful now, but the Norn are all dead. But the Foefire Ghosts have gone. You know, it's just... Another thing that I really like the idea of is a prequel. I've always said that the 100 years before GW1 is really rich area. But the problem with a prequel is you kind of know where the major beats are going to go in the end. So that's also lost its luster a little bit there as well. So I don't know. All right, next. Niels Jensen says, the thing is that Vlox has intelligence, he just has no smarts, and he thinks that his intelligence is equal to smarts. I don't really know what this means. I mean, look, I know on a surface level what you're trying to say, but I don't know how that's substantiated, that view, by the story at all. Is it just me, or did we get like nothing out of Vlox this whole patch? In terms of his motivation and his character, there was zero momentum on it, right? He just kind of spoke vaguely. And he actually contradicted himself a little bit as well. We'll get to in a second. I don't have any... I don't know what Vlox's impression of his own limitations are at all. As for whether he's been characterized well enough to know whether he's one of those guys that thinks he has street smarts, but he doesn't really... I don't know. I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, you're welcome to think it. I don't really know where it's coming from. Oh, Takavian, by the way, in the live chat says, you don't know where the major beats are going if it's a prequel where Vlox has gone back and rewritten stuff. Absolutely, Takavian. That's a very, 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 very good point. All right, look, I can definitely buy a GW3 that is in an alternate timeline. I can definitely buy that, yes. And I would love a setting like that. If we went to... would I? I think I would, yeah. I'd still just rather a whole new planet. Why does Tyria matter that much? If we're going to do an alternate reality where everything can be fucked and different, I mean, fuck it, just call it a different planet. Give me a different world map. Fuck it. Is it because they want... I mean, we get into a really fun conversation with that, right? The question is, if he's going to split the timeline, where does he split it? Does... Okay, I mentioned Aurene before as well. A really fascinating thing would be next patch, Vlox finds where Aurene's sleeping, uses her power to go back to the moment where Sue 1 created this pocket reality, which she fucking did. I know that we have this argument every time I mention it, but I've quoted it verbatim in multiple videos, okay? And instead he does it in such a way where void can't exist, which means that this isn't a unique world anymore, which means that demons aren't interested in this world anymore, which means that the Elder Dragons... But I don't know, whatever. If he did that, then it's just totally different. What remains the same? I don't know. To me, if we could somehow have an alternate reality where the timeline split before the Cataclysm, I think that would be very cool. No earlier than before the Cataclysm. Maybe when the gods... look, maybe the year 0? It would be really cool if Vlox went back in time and stopped the gods breaking the Bloodstone up and giving the magic to the races. Why would that be cool? Because that would have a strong seer connection, which would match it to VOE very nicely, and the nature of the Bloodstones and all of that. They could roll this idea that a bunch of seers, you know, Sudoku'd to create the things. It would stop King Doric's trek. It would stop the feud with Abaddon. It would change the balance with the Char. We'd have a setting where there's still a bunch of dwarves around. The Forgotten would be around. The politics among them would be around as well. There would be no Cataclysm. I don't know. That would be an interesting setting, maybe. And then it's a totally different... I don't know. There's too much to speculate. Because then my question is, what's the big ticket item? And then I'm wondering, do we need a big ticket item? And blah, 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 blah. I got no idea. I got no fucking idea. I guess it's whatever their creative juices are leading them to. I guess it depends what their writing room looks like, you know. What are their narrative directors excited about, you know? Because they might not all be old GW1ers, right? They might be looking to forge their own path. GW3 and the new Garden of the Gods, I'm totally fine with that. Right, okay. Neil says, all the inquest cell... This was really interesting to me. Chat, help me out here. Oh, Arbadi says time travel is an easy way to screw up a story. I get what you mean. I'm a bit nervous about time travel as well. But look, the premise here for me is if they do an alternate time traveled reality for GW3, but GW2 continues on. The whole Lost Season 6 thing, right? You just do both timelines and they don't cross over. They're their own separate products. I don't see any problem with that. Did somebody just type to commit suicide and then retracted it? It's okay. I'm not scared of that word. Okay. I don't know what this lore is here. Niels Jensen says, all the inquest cells think that they're the only inquest there is. First of all, even just that first statement, I have no memory ever of that being definitively stated anywhere in the lore. I don't think it's in the Meet the Asura blog posts from early on. I don't think there's any hearts, any dynamic events. You can suppose that that's the way it is, but I don't think that I've ever had Arenanet explicitly say that. Am I wrong? Have I forgotten something? I might have. But moving on, then they go on and they say each inquest cell is based on a hierarchy of workers. Crew leaders, then a director, then the board. Only the directors know about the existence of the board. The commander and Air Associates think it's the same as well. I don't know where that comes from either. Where did we learn that about the board? And only the director knows about the board. Hello? That's amazing. I would love that to be the story. But to me, this is a big fat cite your sources. I don't know where this is coming from. I do not know where that is flat out stated. So have we got any lore gurus that can help me out? For now, I put a hashtag doubt on that. But it's cool. All right, here you go. Check this out. Zuhang here. So there was a whole discussion on whether Waiting Sorrow was ascended by the original ascension or the modified one before. And I think now we do have some tangible answers. So just to remind everyone, I made the argument of the Black Forest Gatto and the Victoria Sponge, right? Which was this. If Isgarin did a lesser version of Ascension on Waiting Sorrow, why is it so important to exile him from Castora? He didn't do the big dick one. He didn't do Divitium Nava. So why freak out at him about it? It doesn't stop him doing more of the lesser ritual to banish him from the island. The only reason that the banishment from the island makes sense is if Isgarin's original thing with Waiting Sorrow was the full one. He ate a Black Forest Gatto, so Sidoni banned him from Black Forest Gatto. And later, he decided to bake his own cake. And it's not as good, it's only a Victoria Sponge, but it's good enough. That timeline makes sense, right? So in that case, Waiting Sorrow definitely had the full thing. That's the only way that the logic of it all makes sense. But for Waiting Sorrow to have had the whole thing, that means he smuggled her here, and she's never talked about being smuggled here. And it doesn't explain why Sidoni calls it a parlor trick. On the other hand, if it was already the lesser one, I loop back to why was it so important to banish him from this place? It's a plot hole. So it's either bad writing or something we didn't get. Anyway, so that was the discussion at launch. We've now played the first patch. Now let's return. There was a whole discussion on whether Waiting Sorrow was ascended by the original ascension or the modified one. I think now we do have some tangible answers. Zuhang says, in Sidoni's journal during the last story step, there is this specific line explaining why Sidoni felt compelled to exile Isgarin. The quote is this: I do not believe that I could ever forget, much less forgive, the thoughtless actions of Isgarin in diluting our power so that it might be shared with those of the common species. And Zuhang says, this states pretty clearly that Isgarin invented his own mock version of Ascension so that he could use it to ascend Sorrow. And since Sorrow lost her memory, I assume this version of Ascension is the proper Divitia Nava, the one Isgarin later used to ascend all other wizards. Okay, immediately I'm incredibly confused by what you're saying, Zuhang, because I don't see that in that quote. Now, just to be clear, guys, Divitia Nava is a different thing I'll talk about in a second, right? But it's potentially the name for the lesser ritual. So let's read that again. Sidoni says, I do not believe that I could ever forget, much less forgive, the thoughtless actions. He calls them thoughtless. He says their power was diluted, that it was shared with the common species. What does any of that have to do with it being a mock version or invented by Isgaran? It's thoughtless and it dilutes their power, but that doesn't mean it's not the full ascension. That doesn't mean it's of his own making. I can't come to the same conclusion you came to there. Is this just basic reading comprehension I'm missing? What that statement from Sidoni says to me, it does teach us something. It teaches us that when you ascend someone, the full ascension, it dilutes the seer power. We hadn't had that detail before. That's what's new. That's what that statement says, that it dilutes their power. But I don't equate it diluting to their power to having anything to do with the tier or caliber of the ritual or whether Isgaran did it or not. The fact it's thoughtless also doesn't mean whether it's his own invention or not. It really makes much more sense to me that he only invented his own lesser one after he was exiled, because he was exiled and he couldn't do the bigger one. And in the base expansion he said, oh, did he say? But also that because he stripped Waiting Sora of her memories once, he thought, hey, that's handy, I'll do that as well to Zodja and so on. I don't know. I don't get what you got out of that. Moving on, Zuhang says, remember that Soro was suffering from Koda's rage and going mad when Isgaran found her. I found it hard to believe if she passed through all the Ascension trials under that condition. So that's a point to her not being ascended by the original version and Ancora. That's a good point. If she was going mad, how could she possibly figure out the Monty Hall problem? Right? I don't know, though. I think it's a strong argument. It's obviously not a definitive argument, but it's a strong argument. And finally, of course, there is the question as to what part Ancora plays in the ritual. The commander didn't have Ancora when we entered the trial, but we still completed 10 from the physical and mental sections. We missed only the spirit section. That's true, I didn't reflect on that. But yeah, the spirit one was the one that we missed, right? Presumably then, that Ancora itself would provide the last spirit trial and finish Ascension. And so far there are only two mentionings of two versions of Ascension. There's Divitium Nava, and that's what we've been looking at in all the recent story. This is the original Seer version performed on Castora with all the trials and Ancora. It grants great power, but a chance to fail and hurt or kill the participant. There is also Divisia Nava. Now this is the one that Isgaran invented, that doesn't need Ancora, that grants less power, and it wipes the participant's memory. There's a little hint later on that perhaps anyone who's already ascended can use Ancora and can just skip all the trials to straight up ascend others, though the hint is very vague. But that would, full stop, sorry, the last part of my comment disappeared, haha, I meant to say that would explain why Sidoni banned Isgaran from touching Ancora with his curse, because he knows that if Isgaran has access to Ancora, he would abuse the ritual even further. That also, by the way, addresses how he ascended Waiting Sorrow without smuggling her onto the island and without her having to answer the Monty Hall problem, even though it was the full thing. So I don't know what that hint is. That the little hint you're now talking to me about? I don't know what that is. The little hint later? Right, so then lastly, by the way, guys, I'm not really answering things here. I just wanted to showcase this and have fun with it with you all and just talk about it on stream. But so let's talk about Divisia Nava. That first word on the top left there. Divisia Nava. Again, I find myself in an ugly position where I don't know whether we're dealing with plot holes or we're dealing with really amazing writing. Bad writing or good writing. I hate the phrase bad writing. Incoherent. Is incoherent? Okay. I have ran a couple of searches on Wiki. First of all, for Divitium Nava, I was hoping to find a hit on Wiki that sourced every time that word is used in the game, so I could look for myself wherever it appears in the game. Unfortunately, if you search it, it actually just takes you to the story step now, because there was a story step in this patch called Divitium Nava, obviously. So it's a bit buried, right? But I think we all understand Divitium Nava. That's definitely all the big seer-heavy stuff, what Sidonia was angry about. And well, was it? But anyway, what we're dealing with here on this part of the island. This idea of Divitia Nava being the name of the lesser ritual. Now, this is kind of curious. If you search for that on the wiki right now, they haven't made a dedicated page for it. The community hasn't created a page for that one idea. It's only referenced on a generic page about the idea of ascension. If you run a search on the wiki for Divitia Nava, to pull up every place in the game that the words are actually used... Okay, if you run a search on the wiki for those words, you get a ton of hits on the wiki, but it's always the community saying, Divitia Nava is the lesser ritual. Divitia Nava is the lesser ritual. Divitia Nava is the lesser ritual. It looks like one lore nerd has gone to the wiki and has said, this is the fact. And I'm going to put it on all the relevant pages now, right? But the actual source of those two words, Divitia Nava, they are only, as far as I can see, they are only in one thing in the entire game. It's Mabon's journal from Secrets of the Obscure, which is 2 mini-X packs back now, where I'm beginning to wonder if the devs had mapped everything out, before the formal term Divitium Nava appeared. And this is it. It's a fragment of Mabon's journal. The edges of the paper, in that one of those side collections, I do have a video on it, if you watch my Secret of the Obscure Let's Play. The edges of the paper are burnt to a crisp, as though Mabon had tried to destroy the journal. A brief, broken paragraph is preserved at the bottom. This is damaged text. Isgaran and I are Gendaran. It's been goodness knows how long since I walked those grassy plains. We've come a long way, he and I, through it though. That day is barely a memory. After the Divitia Nava, my ascension, seer. I may find myself in Frostgorge. Waiting Sorrow is there now, remaining for Coden. So this is where Divitia Nava appears. It's Mabon's broken accounting after his memory is fucked up on a damaged piece of paper. And this is the only reference I can actually find to that in-game. Now, I would love the Lorehounds to tell me, am I wrong? And I just couldn't find it. It's just not on Wiki. Is Divitia Nava, those exact words, those exact letters, in that exact arrangement, is that written elsewhere in the game in a more definitive way that says, this is the lesser ritual? Because from what I can see, that is the community running a bit far with the ball. To me... this is Secrets of the Obscure. This is Arenanet not really settling on the name of the ritual yet. And kind of having a placeholder-y name that the commander doesn't quite know how to read because it's damaged text. Or because Mabon doesn't know how to recall it correctly. And in my opinion, Mabon is probably talking about Divitium Nava there. That's kind of what I think. But let me be clear, I also don't think that Mabon got the full ritual. Mabon definitely got a lesser ritual, but maybe he thought it was the... I don't know. The thing is, all I just want to point out is that the wiki is now convinced that Divitia Nava is the name of the lesser ritual. I'm not, because the only source I can find for that term in-game is this, which seems a bit broken. So I don't know. I don't know with that. So to go back to this... God, these are so geeky, aren't they? My streams are very fucking geeky. Hope you're enjoying. I don't know whether anything has been resolved for me. I don't know whether we're any closer to this, or knowing whether Waiting Sorrow got the big or the little. The best argument I think you've come up with is that if she's going mad, how can she solve the Monty Hall problem? But... then you yourself tell me there's a hint in-game that suggests it might not have been needed, so I don't know. I think I like the idea that Isgaran stole Ancora and did the full ritual on Waiting Sorrow. And then that's why he was banned from getting it. And he was also banned from this area of the world because this is where the forge is, where they made it. And they just didn't want him anywhere near any of it. And Sidoni was a bit extra and a bit excessive. Even though Isgarin didn't need the Ascension Chamber, fuck it, we're going to lock him off of all of it. That's the story that makes most sense to me. He did the full ritual, Waiting Sorrow. And then the only plot hole with all of this is... why doesn't she act more like a god? If she got the full one. Because he also ripped her memory. Isgarin also ripped his... and I don't know, but by the way, I don't know whether I really like this idea that the Seers are god makers. Arenanet have got to do some heavy lifting in the next patch to justify how Vlox is about to rewrite the fabric of everything to create a new game. If that's what they're going for. Just based on any old Seers stuff. What? Loads of Seers were capable of doing this, but they were just so high-minded, they just never did? I don't know. Alright, next. Rude X Awakening. Or just Rude Awakening. Because the X is silent, guys. Don't you watch hit anime Hunter x Hunter? It's not Hunter x Hunter.
Plebeian.
It's Hunter x Hunter. If you were more cultured about the Japanese, you'd know this. WP, you forget about the Misgrasper law? He keeps doing it. Wait. What have I done? Soda. Yeah, sorry, I did. I just opened a Twisted Fruit Zero. I'm hot. The reason Seers act like gods is that they think they're better than everyone else. Well, no, okay. When I say act like God, I mean they don't act like gods, do they? They don't go around rewriting the fabric of reality. I'll tell you what the Seers are. The Seers are vegans, alright? They undisputably are doing the right thing, okay? They're saving the animals. They're protecting the climate. They are more moral. They are better than you. They are more ethical. Alright, they're walking the walk. They have the power. Wait, no, but they're not rubbing it in your face. No, they're doing something brilliant, but they feel the need, which for the Seers is holding back, right? They're holding back. Vegans hold back from eating meat. The Seers hold back from using their power. But they'll make sure you hear about it, right? They'll talk high and mighty about it, alright? That is their right. That is what they've earned. And can I just say, guys, if any of you ever meet me and you're a vegan, you are welcome to talk all about it, because you've earned it. You've earned a bit of smugness. Alright? That's the Seers. I'm doing it again. I'm talking about the setup for the new game. The new game, like it exists. It's gonna be like a Polymock mobile game. You're a vegan, and that's a spot-on analogy. Yeah, people who drive electric cars as well, they're in that position for the next few years. And get your smugness in, guys, electric car drivers, because it's increasingly becoming less and less special. My read is the Seers were either gifted or stumbled onto big powers and sought to protect those powers from those they deemed unworthy. My read is that they actually invented it for themselves, that they actually put the hard work in, that they really, really fucking tried, that they are possibly... was it outright stated? The most ancient race on Tyria. And they are the most paternalistic, and they very much strive for balance, in a way that the Coden do too, by the way. But these guys really fucking worked, and they worked very hard. And they figured out Ascension all on their own, and they figured out the pitfalls of it and the temptations of it. And they as a society, I'm not talking about like individual power and magic builders, I'm talking about their culture, their society was so elevated and so rock solid that it unfortunately made them very nervous and arrogant and fretful about the other races, the up-and-comers, the ones they couldn't control. And that's why they never shared Ascension, and they said, no, you figure it out for yourself. And that is what they did, right? And that made them incredibly condescending and incredibly arrogant and incredibly blind as well. And they ended up... can I just say, the beauty of this story, the really fucking cool thing about this story, is they lost the war to the Massat over this shit. They lost. They underestimated their lessers, and they lost. And I think that's great. It's maybe a bit tropey, you know. Someone who becomes high and mighty, rests on their laurels, so to speak. But I like it. I really do. I love what they did with the Massat and the Seers in these recent expansions. I think it's top quality work. I think the delivery leaves a lot to be desired, but I think that there are some good world builders still at Arenanet, and I think that's you guys. If you guys think that's a cool story too, I mean, hold on to that, cherish that if they're going to give us a new game. They're like the stewards of knowledge. Yeah, they're hoarding it, and exactly. Okay, let's move on to the next question here. This is from Rude Awakening 1. I agree with the feeling, the in-between moments not being interesting. And I think that's the part of the reason Heart of Thorns has always been my favourite. I think the maps and zerging around and interacting with the other players in open world has always been the best part of the game to me. And I still miss the weeks, months after the Heart of Thorns release, just doing hero challenges with everyone and guiding people to the hard-to-get masteries and POIs, as well implemented as mounts are, the best movements and animations and textures I can think of. Maps feel much more spread out and less detailed and character size oriented. It's like driving your car on the interstate to get to your destination as fast as possible versus walking and biking through your town and letting yourself stop and explore the shops and parks. Yeah, I think you phrased that very, very well. Someone else did drop a comment, and I'm so sorry I didn't get a screenshot of it. I should have. It's because getting the screenshots, I'm just going chronologically, really, and it was hard to slot in at the right time, basically. I was just lazy. Someone else said, no, WP, there's loads of hidden things still in the maps. You just need to actually go and get them. And that was never really my argument. I do think there are still hidden things on the map. I just think it's the scale is somehow... I much preferred Corteria. I preferred the game without perma-swiftness, without super speed, without movement abilities everywhere, without even 25% movement speeds, let alone mounts. That's where I'm at. No quickness, no alacrity. I'm much slower with it. I mean, on many, many scales, I believe in a much slower paced game. Especially for an MMO, by the way. I think that really expert MMO design is to understand that it's like that fishing thing. You kind of don't want it to be too fast paced and too adrenaline fueled, because the social elements take a hit if you do that. Unless you're going to have in-game voice over IP, which is not something we've really seen them play with. But it's really hard to fucking type and talk and relax and be casual in this game. And to build role-playing communities and all the stuff that comes from that. Because it's so fast. Even fishing in Guild Wars 2 is so fast. But anyway, just in terms of exploration, yeah, I loved Corteria. I thought Heart of Thorns was also excellent while the masteries were still being unlocked. That's why I think it's criminal that masteries are account-bound, not character-bound, because there's so much value there. It's really fun to go on an adventure and get those. And they designed it as a long, grindy account thing, where it should have been a short-term character thing. And by the way, there is one other thing about this that I have to acknowledge. That's POF. I fucking loved the start of POF. And that was mounts. Getting the mounts initially, learning to skimmer over the quicksand and stuff like that, using the raptor to jump over the broken bridge. I love that shit. So I'm not totally anti-mount, right? And by the way, you can actually see me on the record many times before POF came out, before I was even doing POF press, talking about how not having mounts can be a good thing and it helps the pace. Because remember, up until the POF press, for what? 13 years? This game, this franchise, this fan base, this community, they were all fervently, ardent believers that mounts didn't matter. Guild Wars' identity as an MMO was, the really successful MMO without mounts. And everyone loved that, and everyone, well, not everyone, but people loved that. People owned that. People talked very happily about that. Me too. And we all knew the risks of adding them. Anyway, let's move on. We got Matthias Plans, who says, this is just about my coin.
My coin collecting.
Had a lot of good messages from you guys. Just so that you know, don't worry, I won't go on a massive rant here. I made a mistake. Alright, first of all, I bought the Lord of the Rings coin collection. Okay, impulse purchase. I was sitting there looking at it. I was thinking about how they're going to go out. They're going to get bought up. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I bought the fucking things and then realised I've made a huge mistake. Does anyone want to guess what the huge mistake is I made? It's related to the fire. But yeah, I bought those. I also bought some pure acetone, alright? Nail polish remover, which I'm going to use to clean the coins. I've learned how to clean them. Apparently it evaporates really quickly, which is quite interesting. And I've learned that you can actually clean a lot of coins just in fairy washing up liquid. I bought like a binder that I can put them in, like a 4-ring binder, and what they call coin flips for displaying the coins, and then you put them in the little plastic pages. I got a bunch of I went shopping. I spent about 50 quid on all different little things so that I can have a little coin album. Oh my god, Takavian got it. Boom, genius. Takavian's a genius. You're absolutely right. Takavian says the timeline of them being delivered and you're only in the current place a year. Exactly, yeah. So the Lord of the Rings ones are being filtered out over the next 3 years. What happens is you buy the thing and they'll mail them to you over the next 3 years and you get these exciting things coming in the mail. That's cool. But I'm not going to be here long. This is a temporary property. So I was like, fuck. And they don't let you cancel. So apparently here's a big thing. Well, okay, they do let you cancel, but it takes a while. And by the time it's cancelled, all the sales might have ran out. So it's a bit scary. And you can't cancel easily. You have to like contact them and stuff. But you can't just change the delivery address, because here's apparently a big scam. What people do is they get a couple of your details from the Royal Mint. They message them and say, hi, I bought the fucking £3,000 per coin collection or whatever, the gold coins, the gold proof coins. What is it, £15,000 collection. Hi, I bought these £15,000 coins, but I got the address wrong. Can I update the address, please? And the Royal Mint used to say, yeah, okay, what's your new address? And then you just put your address in there, and you'll steal someone else's coins. The Royal Mint will now send you £15,000 worth of coins just because they're going to your address. So that was some scam that people were doing years ago. So they're extremely strict about it now. They do not let you change the address. So I'd be fucked. I'd get like 1 coin and then move. And so now I've sent a message to them and I'm trying to get it cancelled. And I put a whole fucking thing in, and then I just got an automated response, and now I've responded to the automated response, and now they haven't said anything again, and so yeah, I have a bit of buyer's remorse there. I don't know what I'll do, really. You'll take them if you want. It's crazy to me that scam works, by the way, because you'd think as soon as one of the fucking expensive-ass coins doesn't appear, someone would put in a complaint, but clearly that hadn't been happening. Clearly rich fuckers had been paying for these things, and they don't even realise 3 grand is going amiss each time. Oh, by the way, they also apparently do platinum-proof coins sometimes. They do silver, gold, and then there's another tier above it, platinum proof sometimes. That doesn't exist for the Lord of the Rings set. Anyway, yeah, this guy, Matthias, says, I collected coins, they were euros. I wanted to hear about the euro collections. He said, every country has many different variants when I was a kid, but I sold it to my dad because I was too impatient for that sort of hobby. By now, he's reached a point where it's nearly impossible to find new coins organically, since some countries like the Vatican make very small batches which are brought up by collectors right away. Instead, he buys them from other collectors or coin markets now. It's quite an expensive hobby, but the collection's huge. That sounds really interesting. You should show me a picture. This reminds me of a story where my dad's collector friend's kid found his collection and bought some ice cream with it. Brutal. Can you imagine that? There you go. That's what I was talking about, though. That's how the brilliant uncirculated shit ends up getting out there. Right. Nightly winter here, coming in hot. Your Vlogs rant made me realise a big thing that has been missing from the Mini X-Pack storytelling, and that is premise. Like Vlogs acts as all of Tyrion leadership is incredibly corrupt, but nobody, especially the commander, isn't challenging him on that premise. Nobody isn't, so we are. Double negative. Like, what makes it even weirder is that the commander is like the poster child of current Tyrion. So Vlogs, seeing us as the true hero, but everyone else bad, is an oxymoron. I don't know how much I agree with that bit, but I think you've got a very good point that people aren't challenging him on the premise. It would be very easy to say, hold on. Didn't we do a great thing with the founding of the pact? Yeah, it broke up, but we rallied together. Haven't the Char made leaps and bounds and strides to, you know, move on from their barbaric, animalistic ways? I mean, Christ! Look at all the stories Arenanet have written to soften the Char and kill what made the Char interesting. Only to then turn around and suggest that the commander should be able to talk about these things. What have the Norn done that's controversial? Not just in the past 15 years of in-game storyline, but before that. What have they done? What is wrong with Newt Whitebear? Yeah, they're a bit individualistic, but they have banded together and helped. What have the Sylvari done wrong, or the Pale Trees done wrong? Yeah, it's not just premise, but it's that I would go for even further than this Nightly Winter. I would say it's that the premise is flawed. The world that Arenanet have written is not the world that Vlox is seeing. The only way they can wriggle through this is specifically through the lens of the Asura and the Asuran bureaucracy, which, to be fair, they have done with that story about the dam breaking. They have done that. But it's a question of delivery, and I feel like there hasn't been enough focus on that. That was kind of an easy thing to miss, actually. And it makes all this other stuff feel too vague. Anyway, let's let Nightly Winter speak instead of me. Same thing happened in Janthir Wilds with Awaiting Sorrow, the Titans in Janthir itself. Characters made baseless assumptions, and nobody challenged those ideas. Waiting Sorrow being the victim of his Garans, who seeked freedom. Janthir being this dangerous, inhospitable place no man could survive. And Titans themselves being world-ending catastrophes. Well, I feel like some of that was justified, wasn't it? The Isles were pretty fucked up with the storms and stuff. The Titans were justifiably terrible, even from Guild Wars 1. All those things were just said, but Arenanet didn't build any premise for those ideas to stand on. I think they did better than you think they did on those ones, I think. That being said, I like Vlox. And I think generally he is an interesting character, but his ideals not being challenged in any way is really dragging the story down. Commander keeps yapping about how Vlox should join the right side to fix the broken world, rather than asking how it is broken in the first place. At the very least, they could tell anecdotal stories of bad stuff that's happened off screen, like how Vlox witnessed corruption and any bad deeds of the Alliance, and Commander somehow has been spared of all of it. Like, yeah, he talked in the patch about myopia, right? Like, how does he justify that? If anything, shouldn't Vlox hate the Commander when all that supposed stuff has happened in Tyria and seemingly the Commander has turned a blind eye? Okay, so here's Graven again. Now, Graven has an alternate view, where Graven tries to justify Vlox by talking about the facts we know. So let's just let him speak. He says Vlox's worldview has been shaped by his own experience, bureaucracy preventing him saving lives, and the Commander's an individual actor that often saves lives without oversight from and often in spite of established systems of power. In his opinion, basically Vlox wants to be like the Commander. In his opinion, Tyrion is governed by an oligarchy that is just as interested, if not more interested, in perpetuating their own rule as they are in protecting Tyria. His worry is that power will continue being absorbed into this oligarchy and away from individuals, meaning that during a future crisis when a commander is needed, that person will be blocked from saving Tyria. This was a recent theme at the end of Janthir Wilds, with Livy using the scepter without permission from the Alliance, and to a lesser extent in Secrets of the Obscure, with Isgaren's unwillingness to intervene in Tyria and Nyos. Well, yeah, but everything about Isgaren is this theme, and Sidoni. It's the heart-beating heart of the story. He sees the Commander as being able to work outside of these existing systems. When these systems are left to their own devices, they tend towards failure. But imagine where Tyria would be if we hadn't been allowed to act as freely as we were, if we had been required to become Pact Marshal, like how Ritlock was forcibly recalled, followed to force all of Cantha's bureaucratic rules to the letter, or if the Astral Ward or Wizard's Court had successfully kept us out, like they were ordered to do. Vlox sees those windows only getting smaller going forwards until they are completely shut. Now, I think what Graven has said is really good, right? And that is Vlox's view, and that's the argument Arenanet should be making. I think you can pick holes in it still. To me, it's very easy to say to Vlox, hold on, it wasn't all the Commander. Traherne formed the Pact, right? Logan led the Pact. The Commander did do a lot of specific big things, but there were many forces and many alliances for good out there, and they weren't all corralled together just by the Commander at all. But that's the thing, right? We don't get any of this in-game, and so my thing with this comment chain is I see Graven responding to Nightly Winter, and I wonder if Graven thinks they've satisfactorily answered Winter. When I want to be clear, I don't think that you have. You've given the in-universe reasons, but what Nightly Winter is really talking about is delivery, right? All of this stuff that Graven has talked about is far too buried. it's not platform. This may all be true. Let's say that it's all entirely true and there's a good story for it being true, right? It still doesn't matter because that hasn't been blatantly and openly talked about. We haven't been able to get into any of this meat. None of those challenges have really been, you know, they're only in the vaguest, quickest, briefest of ways. The main story, as it is to just play it, leaves you feeling how Nightly Winter has posted. So I think Nightly Winter is perfectly valid to feel that way. And I feel a little bit hollow. You know, Graven could say, oh, there's this, and this if you really look between the cracks. But my thing with the story right now, speaking for myself, is I don't want to look so deep beneath the cracks. I want everything Graven just talked about to be there, blatant, and reiterated a few times as well. But it's that thing where it's like the dialogue budget, the dialogue quantity per patch is always too low, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, and so far, by the way, the only real meat I've seen for Vlox was the thing about the dam, and I can't even remember where we heard that. It certainly never came up again in this patch. Right, next. Well done, let me have a drink here in the live chat. March says in live chat, I feel like we've already experienced a lot of mismanagement and corruption and selfishness leading to harm. I don't think it needs to be spelled out. For example, Bangar started a civil war for his own gain, the White Mantle story. There's plenty. Well, okay, but what are we saying, though? Let's pretend you're Vlox and you're looking at Bangar. How do you feel about Bangar? Bangar is a rogue, right? The whole Frost Legion thing, trying to seize power for himself, acting on his own, he's a rogue. Also, I just kind of don't like this idea of Tyrian oligarchy, by the way. In as much as the idea there's some supernatural national organization. Like, again, that's a refining of the scope of the universe for me that I don't like. I would much rather Vlox be an Asura angry about Asura issues rather than thinking he knows everything about all of Tyria and stuff. Okay, there's a lot of really juicy stuff if they got into the Tyrian UN and stuff more. To me, if I were Arenanet, I would have put a lot more emphasis on the Tyrian UN. The arguments about the Tyrian UN, the Tyrian Alliance, what they argued about last year, how they're failing this year, and what Vlox sees in that. And I would have had a lot of Asuran influence in there as well. Unfortunately, the story that Arenanet have written is the Asura influence on the Tyrian Alliance is very minimal. They got overruled last year. And that doesn't really help his angle, I think. Or his motivation. You were sad that the Order of Whispers and Real, of all people, didn't know about the Astral Ward? Oh, me too. I mean, yeah, look, if I had been there at the end of the Dragon Saga, and we had to do the end of Dragon Saga, and we were going into a new era, I would have focused entirely on the Orders. The Orders were really exciting. And conflict between them. Right, anyway. There we go, the meta is over. Next topic. I think someone mentioned you in the stream, but Vlox's main goal seems to have changed between VOE and this patch. Oh yeah, and now we just get to the weirdness. And I felt this was weird playing this yesterday. What do you guys in the live chat and in the comments make of this? When we first met Vlox in Beneath the Canopy, he described his goal as such. Tyria will face many more trials in the years to come. We need more like you if we're going to be ready. I am trying to prepare Tyria for what's to come. To do that, we have to remove the impediments to individuals like you. During those conversations, he seemed assured that a greater threat is approaching, and he is doing whatever to help Tyria prepare for it, removing power from the Alliance and Isgaran, etc. It's all a part of that preparation. So first of all there, by the way, yeah, he did talk in a way as though he had seen something. I would have expected in this patch we'd find, you know, he'd had premonitions, or there had been some prophecy, or I don't know. He was related to the Infinity Ball. He'd got his hands on the Infinity Ball, and with the Infinity Ball, he'd seen some fucked up stuff. And he was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. Or behind the scenes, he'd been talking to Ivan and the Aether Blade that had been traveling through the fractals and the mists, and he'd heard what had gone on with Unker and stuff, and he'd you know, he had some insight. What is I really thought this patch would give us what the fuck is Vlox talking about. It feels like it's a huge mistake to not do that. Why is he so sure there's some greater threat? Just because he's angry about the dam issue all that time ago? He seems to be talking in a tangible way about a greater threat. And that's at the end of the expansion and the start of the patch. After his ascension, he stopped mentioning this. He instead started to focus on this error in the code of creation, which combined with the other things, him hating the corruption and myopia in the leaders, him stating the CUDA is a nasty piece of work, it basically sounds like he's talking about the fundamental existence of sins, or imperfection, or mistake, or corruption, I would add to that. And he wants to create a world where no one could ever be bad because being bad as a concept just doesn't exist anymore, which sounds like taking free will away, right? Really, in a way. You're right, he did start talking very differently as soon as he ascended. So what, do we just discredit all of his original thoughts and feelings? His misgivings about something bad coming? I suppose we could say, look, he never had any real premonition. He just saw it was fucking Titans, and then it was Cryptis, and then it was the world's... It was this, and this, you know. Something else will happen. I think it's more interesting to think he had something tangible, but you know. The other idea is that maybe Vlox didn't pass his his sanity check during his ascension. Like how Anka basically went mad in her time in the Fractals, or Scarlet went mad from peeking into the Eternal Alchemy. Well, technically because of Morgemoth, but the idea is that... Or you could say Matthias went mad getting too much magic, or the dragons themselves went mad, right? The fact that Isgarin had to specifically create the lesser version of Ascension to share it with the other races makes me think that maybe Divitium Nava is actually dangerous and it can break your mind with information overload or something. So maybe Vlox went into this raw form of Ascension, got his mind slightly broken because of everything he learned, and so he started to obsess over perfection and correcting everything. That'd be pretty convenient for Arenanet to write him as a proper villain. Well, my take on that is I sort of thought that the thing that killed you was the trials. The vibe I got, especially from the little side quest thing I did last night that you guys did not see, sorry about that, but the vibe I got was that the trials themselves are weeding the seers out. They're killing the seers who are not strong of body, who are not strong of mind, and who are not strong of spirit. And they're doing that because they can't risk someone as... The Ascension itself doesn't kill you. It's all the shit leading into it that is a part of the ritual. And they constructed it that way so that anyone weak-willed, like to get someone who would give in to temptation, the gold coin pile thing, right? Those people can't make it because they can't risk ascending people that don't go through the trials. And that's what outrages Sidoni. Isgarin ascended someone without putting them through the full trials. So what the fuck are you going to do about that? She's a wild card now. She's not indoctrinated. She doesn't fully conform to our academic rigor, our tests, our strength of character. We cannot trust her with this power. She did not do the trials. You fucked up. And in fact, Isgarin knows that, by the way. That's why he kind of kept her prisoner for years. And that's what was going on with Janthia Wilds, right? He said, I have to keep her close. She's getting too powerful. That was Isgarin's hubris. So to me, the story works best when the trials are what are killing people, not the right. And by the way, that makes Vlox really fucking cool as well. It makes Vlox cool because it basically says... He hit the seer bar of quality. He is of a seer standard, which somewhat makes me think we can trust him. Which is an exciting place to take him, you know, as a villain / not villain. But then Isgarin's kind of worried he might be fucking with it. So I don't know. I kind of think Ascension doesn't break your mind. I think they try to break your mind before then. Or maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe it's everything. Maybe we're too deep in the weeds and Arenanet never thought about any of this. Hardly unreal... Oh, and then Ithrahad said, hardly unrealistic. His Silicon Valley tech bro fellows on Earth seem to change up their claims and goals every 6 months or so as well. That actually got a laugh out loud from me. Exactly why he shouldn't end up like that. Make him fantastical rather than another Season 4 and 5 Homelander. I didn't watch that show, but I did see people bitching about on Reddit. It seems like a lot of shows are ending very poorly lately. Stranger Things was another one, right? And Graven's here says, I see these as the same goal. He isn't talking about a specific threat in the first part, but that Tyria will always be threatened, and people groups that hoard limit the spread of power, like the Alliance, like the Wizard's Court, will inadvertently leave us vulnerable to those threats going forward. People like Kuda, Misoon, Viper? Who the hell is Misoon, Viper? Bangar, etc., who are more interested in dominating instead of cooperating, are the extreme darker examples of this. But those same drives for control are in our allied groups. I think Graven believes in a cool story that I just don't think has been written tangibly enough. WP, I really don't like Vlogs. So as you guys can see, there was a lot of chat from you all about Vlogs. A lot of us are unsettled about Vlogs at the moment. Here's cool boy Jake. I really don't like Vlogs. I hate how he's been stringing us along for 6 months now. And he still won't say what his ultimate goal is. Or the threat he keeps warning us about. It all feels so vague to me, and that's what annoys me about it. The story would have worked much better if only we had some examples of the good he's done. Lucky Peanut says, I really wanted to like Vlogs, but I'm getting the terrible sense that the writers didn't have a proper plan for him. The skeptic in me says he's just the placeholder for Kuda to take over, or resolve the Inquest beef as an antagonist group. I think it's a bit deeper than that. Graven again, copy-pasted the same message that he's posted on a lot of these others. Costage is here. He's also in the live chat at the moment. Costage said there's a journal in Southern Pilgrim's Rest Alliance camp which explains some of Lox's backstory around the time he was in Ratasum, or about to leave it behind, where he ignored bureaucratic red tape and he did the right thing before the people vanishing. By the way, guys, bureaucratic and bureaucracy, I think bureaucracy is the big one, is a word that I am criminally bad at spelling. I am really fucking bad at spelling bureaucracy. But I learned it recently, alright? Just spell the word bureau first and remember that the first vowel is a U. If you remember that the first vowel is a U and otherwise it's doing the French thing like E-A-U, you know, like in beautiful or whatever, you can get there. Anyway. So I'm not going to read that from Costage because we'll see that in game. So fuck it. Next is your boy Kenny. He says, I think there's an extremely good chance the Forgotten Ascent... This is a cool idea from Kenny. This is a theory that I've never considered and I love. I'm not to be too arrogant or whatever. It's quite rare for... Like, we could have been talking about this for years. I think there's an extremely good chance that the Forgotten ascended the human gods before bringing them to Tyria. Since the Forgotten had been to Tyria and interacted with the Seers and Castora long before the humans showed up. That's a cool fucking idea. I like that. The Forgotten are in Tyria. The Seers kind of share some stuff about Ascension, but not much. The Forgotten figure out their own methods of Ascension. The Seers all die. The Forgotten are doing their own thing. They're their own race. They're their own species. They have their own chapters in history. They go to the Mists for a while. And they find, like, big, powerful, worthy mortals. They have their own ideas of what the bars for Ascension should be. And they say, do you know what? Melandru, on planet Argon 5, you've really helped all the people on planet Argon 5. I'm going to help you out here. Come with us. I'm going to ascend you. And they ascend Melandru. And she becomes the eldest of the gods. Later, they pluck Devonna from some other race, some other area of the Mists. And she becomes the leader of the group, you know? And so on and so on. I like that idea. I like the idea that the Forgotten ascended the human gods. And then once the human gods became Mistwalkers, they were a bit rogue. They went all over the place. Maybe the Forgotten idea of doing this ascension wasn't quite as good as the Seers. So the entities they ascended were a bit more rebellious. Which is why when they came to Tyria, they started fucking with stuff a lot. Maybe that's why they came to Tyria, because the Forgotten said, hey, this is our world, come check it out. There's a lot of interesting ways that the story can connect up with a theory like that. There's a lot of stuff that can be mapped out. That would also explain why the Seers don't like the human gods and weren't responsible for the human gods, but aren't outright at war with them either, because they appreciate, look, that was a Forgotten project, okay, you know, we're kind of similar. You know, they got a bit of a frosty relationship, but not a totally hostile relationship. I think a lot of stuff folds out of that makes sense and is cool to me. The only bit that doesn't work is then when we talk about Forgotten Ascension in terms of Guild Wars 1 and the Guild Wars 1 heroes ascending. Because we certainly never became a god when we ascended in Guild Wars 1 at Augury Rock. But then maybe that is the difference between the Forgotten's Divitium Nava and the Forgotten's Divisium Nava, or whatever the fuck. Do you get what I mean? Maybe they had a greater and a lesser... Want some more tangibles. If you haven't done COE before on your character, I believe Kuda will not say that line about us killing her father. Also, I'm not sure about Kudu being a huge part of the Asura character's personal story. If anything, Kudu only appeared in one of the storylines, the Weather Controller, out of the 3. He wasn't in the 10 or 30 stories. You're right. You're totally right. Even as I said that on the stream yesterday, I was thinking to myself, I'm wrong about this. He's not in it all the time. But I couldn't remember if it was... I couldn't remember if he was only in level 10 or he was only in one branch or what, right? Because there is a lot of stuff about the SNAF prize. I'm not sure if you're right. He does pop up no matter what choice you pick, right? I'm sure he does, at least in some ways. Anyway, you're right. He's not everywhere. But let's talk about this thing. Kuda not killing her father. Cottage says, wait, I did get that line. Even though I never did COE story mode on my char. Just like I got it with my Sylvari, who has done the story mode. I wonder if only doing explorable mode triggers it. I'll have to test. Zuzhang said, oh, interesting. So we don't really know whether that is dynamic dialogue. I hope it is, but it's hard to tell. Alright, and lastly, guys, this is the end of our little Q&A, our little lore reflection here. The thing with Vlox's power is at the start of a bold strategy, Ritlock asked Isgaran if changing the code of creation means something to him, to which Isgaran responded, not really. The idea is even beyond the power of Divitium Nava. But then, in the last instance, when we mentioned Vlox wanting to make one small change, Isgaran immediately interrupted, saying he had also trod the path of one change, and he knows how dangerous it is. That's the story contradicting itself in 2 back-to-back instances. So... Inside Doni's curse, there is this line, enslaved to Tyria, he claims perfection. To me, that sounds very much like Isgaran had actually tried to correct everything, the same as Vlox. Yeah, I forget what these details were about Isgaran. He was tied to Tyria, wasn't he? In the same way that the Masat were? Or am I getting that confused? Can't be that Isgaran can't remember what... It could be that Isgaran can't remember what changing the code of creation referred to because of the curse. And after it gets lifted, he gets the full picture. Like he can't remember where the spire is at the start. I don't know. It feels a bit messy, doesn't it? I'm not sure what I make of all that. There is a pattern of Isgaran not remembering everything in base VOE, so I think the curse affecting his memory is fair. Again, I think that that's a situation where it's a fair in-universe justification, but they never actually talked about it in a clear way. Like, if he had said, oh, it doesn't mean anything, but my memory's still foggy, and then in the second instance he said, I think I remember now, this is really bad, then that would be fine for me. But as it happens, it just feels clunky, and like we have to rationalize and do the homework for ourselves to get basic character details. So, Sorry, no, this is the last one from Banjo. Honestly, Vlox is annoying me at this point. It's feeling very later cub. It's lost its intrigue. I get what they were going for with the it's not comprehensible to the weak mind. You have to see it when it comes. But it does feel like we're being dragged along for 6 months and we're no closer. No spoilers, but I reckon it will be Vlox does something he thinks is right, but his solution to the problem will negatively impact himself. He could then be an ally as he works on redemption. I agree, guys. I'm not very into Vlox this patch. I don't think they progressed his story well enough. I still like his voice. I still like his cadence. I like his vibe. I like his energy. I like the way that he treated Kuda. I love the character beat that he just immediately tossed the Inquest aside. But I think there are some like concrete elements that I want from the character that this patch failed to deliver that really have debased him for me, and that's a shame. There's a lot of positives there, though. I don't know. How are we feeling? There you go, guys. That's a lot of Locke's conversation. And by the way, I totally acknowledge I haven't read all the lore yet, so we'll see where that goes now as we run around the open world and get some of these lore journals. But it does feel very later grub. It feels very... the phrase I was using was trust me, bro, right? Something bad is going to happen. Trust me, bro. I'm going to help you. Trust me, bro. It's like... What's also weird is that this patch story suggests we're only now able to contact the mainland and use portals to return home. But in the side stories, we've already done it. Yeah, I picked up on that yesterday as well. I felt the same as well. When they were talking about how the curse was lifted and everything's connected, I was thinking, hold on, wasn't there already story about this? But I couldn't remember it well enough because it's been 6 months, you know. Okay, so I do have one more screenshot. It's not like a Q&A question thing, but it is the subreddit. It's the Reddit thread that someone posted. Who was it? Maguma Gold Legend posted this on my subreddit to Self WP. And I love it when you guys use that, by the way. So we can finally read what they have to say. Guild Wars 3 speculation. Is Arenanet speaking to the player through vlogs? See, that fucking came up on my timeline, guys, the day of the patch. So I was like, oh shit, Guild Wars 3 stuff must be going on. So here we go. I just played through VOE for the first time, he says. Or she says, they say. And I finished that latest patch. Vlox as a character feels like it's Arenanet subtly breaking the fourth wall and talking to the player. Director, Vlox, reference to the studio director or game director position at Arenanet. I am trying to prepare Tyria for what's to come. To do that, we have to remove the impediments to individuals like you. What's to come in Guild Wars 3? Impediments? Referring to technical limitations in Guild Wars 2's engine and core systems? But my goals remain unchanged. I'm going to return control of Tyria's future to her people. The next generation of those like you. The next generation of Guild Wars 3 gamers? I regret that things have gone this way, Commander. You deserve better. But circumstances have dictated my choices for me, referring to the various layoffs, the cancelled projects, etc. that were out of Arenanet's control. Also, by the way, just design fuck-ups. Short-sightedness. Short-sightedness has fucked this game harder than anything else. Systems that they implement that are only really worthwhile for the first year. They don't think 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. There is an error in the code of creation propagated outward from the very beginning. Literally referring to engine code. This is it, you see. The chance to reforge Tyria into something unbreakable. The culmination of everything we've worked for. Guild Wars 3 will be the culmination of the studio's 2+ decades of work. What do we think, WP? Have I gone completely insane? Or does anyone else see it? Now, in the comments for this thread, he's had 3 messages. None of them are from me. People are saying he has gone insane. No, I agree with you, Maguma Gold Legend. I think I think Arenanet are being meta. I do feel the meta conversation there. If they're going to do a big announcement... Okay, listen, guys. Let's all be real for a second. There's an announcement coming because they haven't done a mini X-Pack announcement. So whether... Ignore Guild Wars 3, right? Just think of Project X. It might be a full-fledged expansion to Guild Wars 2 for all we know. It could be a full-fledged expansion to Guild Wars 1. It could be anything, right? Something is coming. Because they're not about to put an announcement out saying, yeah, by the way, the studio's closing. That's it. No more boxes. Nothing, right? Even if the announcement is Living World Forever, by the way, we're back to Season 1, to everyone's groaning, right? An announcement is coming. Full stop. Do I think that they're being meta about that announcement? I do. I think they're being a meta about whatever is coming up. And yeah, I think it sounds like a new product altogether, doesn't it? The next generation, the code of creation. Every single one of these lines... Okay, the only one I think that's a stretch is your first one, Director Vlogs. Because the idea of a director in the Inquest, I think, is quite old, isn't it? Actually, is it? Did they only just create the director? Something's telling me maybe that was only created recently-ish. But all of them, yeah, I think they're being meta. I get the feeling that they're being meta, like hardcore meta in a lot of their patches. Like a huge amount of their patches. I felt like they were being very meta in the Giala patches, for example. So, yeah, and I think it's all priming people to think this way for whatever announcement comes, presumably with patch 3. Announcement next week in SGF. Trust my uncle is John Arenanet. What is SGF? Anything but the Icebrood Saga, please, not that. The great irony with the Icebrood Saga is that the first 2 releases were high enough quality that I would have bought a box for them. But people weren't willing to pay for build templates for them. People's minds be overthinking in content droughts. Are we in a content drought at the moment? Is that what's happening? I mean, it certainly was with Giala, I'll give you that. But no, I often wrestle with this thing as well, where I wonder if I'm just way too fucking close to the product at this point, and I see meta commentary which is not meta commentary. I do lose a lot of confidence with that. The Icebrood Saga could have easily supported 40 plus episode storyline. There was so much lore to mine there. 3x backs worth of stories. I agree completely. I totally agree. The Icebrood Saga, a fucking Destroyer Saga. And when you look at just like some of the worst stuff about the Icebrood Saga were huge moments that were just dotted in there. Like the fucking introduction of the dwarves again. The dwarves? Do you not realise that that's a Depths of Tyria expansion there, waiting on a silver platter for you? That's a full expansion. Oh, and just to dump it in a random patch. I don't know what planet. No, I can't. I don't want to be disrespectful to the creatives. All right. I just don't understand some of the decisions that were made. Again, it's just short. I do understand. It's short-sightedness. That's all it is, plain and simple. Fuck it, do it all now. We don't want to think about 10 years from now because we might have gone bust. We don't charge a sub fee. We're not WoW. We're not FF14. We're not the shiny new thing anymore. We fumbled the ball. We got no money. Let's just do the best we can today. And it's just that short-term thing. And that's all it is. Depths of Destruction. I love the name of that. Because it's like Destruction's Depths, a reference to Hit Eye of the North mission. Right, let's turn this off now then. There you go, guys. There's the Q&A. There's the review, the community review. Now, I'm looking at the fact that it's nearly 1 a.m. We've been going for 2 hours. I promised that this would only be a 2-hour episode. So I'm going to stop there, actually. We'll do another one, guys, tomorrow, where we get all the lore on the map. So this will be the community edition. WoodenPotatoes staple. And yeah, I will hope to see you all tomorrow. And it will be tomorrow. I'm not even going to pretend to leapfrog days. We're just going daily. Fuck it. So thank you, by the way, to Moo Reaper there for the $20 donation. You were the one person who contributed today, and that really means a lot to me, so thank you. I know it tends to be the more I stream daily, the more that shit dries up, so thank you for that. You're strangely positive about the future of Arenanet? Me too, in a way, right? Here's what I feel I'm very confident in. If there is a Guild Wars 3 or a Project Tyria, right? Well, whatever name it would go by. I know myself. If they come out with a really fucking good trailer that's showing like an Unreal Engine game, beautiful lighting and all that stuff, and I know that's totally superficial and that doesn't speak to the quality of the storytelling or the gameplay. In fact, the more intricate and layered and complex it is graphically, those are actually kind of warning signs as far as I'm concerned for how sustainable and easy to develop a product would be. But if they come out with a really good trailer, a really beautifully a really beautifully rendered new game on a new engine, I know that I'll be over the moon excited, and it won't be logical, but I'll be on the hype train. I remember Guild Wars 2, all those early promotional things where you saw the new dynamic combat system where you'd click on like meet the elementalist, and it showed those videos of like an elementalist throwing fireballs or meteors at drakes in the water at Queensdale, or just the trailer looking at the windmill with the dynamic shadows splashed across it as it rotated around, or the light rays. It was so, and the day-night cycle, right? These were all such huge improvements. It was all so exciting. And a truly open world. There was so much that was so much of an enhancement for Guild Wars 2 versus Guild Wars 1. If they can capture even a little bit of that with a Project Tyria announcement, I mean, it'll be very exciting, won't it? There are the rational sides of my brain that say, okay, can we trust them to really learn from their mistakes? Because there were certain mistakes they learned from with Guild Wars 1 that they immediately reneged on, right? They explicitly said 5-man party size for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And then they broke it. They tried to do fucking 50-man shit in the open world with Triple Trouble and Tequatl, right? They went to 10-man with the raiding, and it's so much worse for the LFG scene and stuff, right? And these were all lessons that they learned and then they went back on. Or they talked about keeping certain elements of the combat system sacred. We're never going to let you manipulate cooldown speeds because everyone's going to use them and it's going to get much harder to balance things. Oh, look. Never mind all that, let's do fucking alacrity. And now we're in a world where the people I think who are close to the product and really understand the product are really advocates for removing alacrity. It's like, what? Is it really a lesson learned if we learn it for 1 year at launch and then we start going back on it because of some new hires? I don't know, man. Like, I have to be honest, that will be in the back of my mind with any Project Tyria. It will. But there is one thing that fundamentally will be better now. I won't have in the back of my mind the fear that they're going to abandon Guild Wars 2. Why? Because of Reforged. Reforged is the coolest fucking initiative they ever could have done in priming the community for a Project Tyria, and they've done that, so good for them with that. That's at least one thing off the table. Off the table of doubt. Oh, I love this build. There's so many cool things for them to talk about. How they want to handle microtransactions. I think they'll do a Chinese-style opt-in sub, by the way. I think you'll find their business model is a lot like Fallout 76. Can I just point out, Fallout 76 is in the top 10 most profitable games on Steam. Still. Years after its release, after an incredibly rocky release, and they don't even really add that much content. They really don't. If I were like in the marketing or the business team or whatever there, if I was talking to the publishers at NCSoft, I'd be looking at Fallout 76, and that has an optional opt-in sub for people, and the seasons and stuff. I think that will be a thing for Project Tyria. The day they abandon their old project is when either NCSoft does something to make them or they go bankrupt. Yeah. It would just be crazy for them to abandon anything. Oh, there's a big argument about Jormag v Primordus in chat at the moment, is there? Jormag was the aggressor when it should have been Primordus. Well, it was just too short. Everything was too... No. Primordus, Guild Wars 2, Primordus died as he lived, as a hungry hippo. Condi Warrior, what elite spec is this? This is Paragon. You see my wings? While I have big wings, I have really, really strong Condi damage. The brighter and stronger my wings, the more epic my Condi damage modifiers. That's it. The rest of it is just using Pirate Queen Relic to hold quickness on myself. Some physicals. I could probably do a lot better with it. Using S4 as a stun break. Alright. There you go, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you had a good time. Let me know if you think I missed anything, if I gave you a shit answer to your comments. Can I just say thank you again to people who've been watching, donating, leaving the messages, and I'll endeavour to keep doing Q&As and stuff as we go forward. One more episode at least on the lore around the map, and maybe finishing the other heart, obviously. And after that, I'm thinking Reforged, guys. So the last episode of VOE, maybe tomorrow. Take care, guys. See you next time.